Hi people, this is gonna be a really heavy one today. Really heavy. Now, I wasn't even planning on making videos because I'm supposed to be writing my video essay, which I don't even think I finished the intro on, but I'll finish it for sure. Honestly, right now, this is a really pressing, important matter and it warranted a video, especially with the cesspool of comments I've seen on Twitter, which I'll get into my feelings. Sometimes I do have to remind myself that Twitter isn't like representative of everyone in the world, but it's so hard whenever it's like the only thing that's being thrown at you and you're like, these people are psychotic. But I'm trying to still have hope that most people are sane, most people are kind and empathetic, but it's so hard. This situation is just bringing back all the feelings I had whenever I was younger, whenever like George Floyd died, whenever like a lot of things in the past happened and they just like piled on. It was just like, this world is terrible. It's insanely terrible. And it's so hard to have this situation ongoing right now for almost a week at this point and not like the media coverage. It's just like, how can people turn a blind eye to this or defend Israel or any of that? It's insane. Like I can't comprehend how you would think like that. Like I said, Twitter made me extremely mad. I saw a post about, I think this journalist went to a Zionist protest in, I believe it was New York, and the things they were saying were insane. They were literally just calling for genocide of Palestinians.
Kill all Palestinians, all of them. Not one left. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be deceased.
We fucking flatten them like a parking lot.
Yeah,
wait. Flatten them out once and for
there's
all.
nothing else you can do. They proved to us that there's nothing else you can do. We tried, and
we tried everything. It doesn't work. We have to wipe them flat off the fucking map, like a fucking parking lot.
I'm not stopping till all Arabs are wiped out.
Just blatantly, like Gaza should be leveled to the ground, flatten Gaza. It's crazy. Like how. Like, those are literally neo-fascists. Like, those are fascists. It's insane. Like, that literally pissed me off so much. I was like, I have to make a video. Okay. Because if this is what people are saying on the ground, regular people who obviously walk out into the earth and they're saying this and there's literally no pushback. In fact, the main media coverage is literally what they're saying, but in a more civil manner. But it's literally the same thing. Like media coverage from CNN, from Fox News is all that video, but in a more civil tone. So it doesn't sound like they're calling for genocide, but these media apparatuses have the power to influence this situation in ways that are insurmountable. And these people are suffering, and yet there's just no one to help them. Just wanted to offset the insanity. It's kind of like my transphobia video where there was a creator. I mean, a lot of people are transphobic, so I was like, I have to just offset this. I have to be a voice that is against this, because it's just insane that people have these positions and it's like acceptable. Like people don't look at them and go, you are insane for being like trans people should be burned and Palestinians deserve to be killed, children. Like the fact that people don't look at people like that and go, you are insane and you should not have a mouth. In fact, you should get a lobotomy right now. The fact that that's not the position, I have to offset it. I have to, otherwise I will go insane. This might be honestly like a video essay length because this is a long outline. Like, I wrote this outline like I was about to really do something, but we're just talking. So disclaimer, I want to do a disclaimer before I start because I've seen a lot of people who have been pro-Palestine have been equated as being Hamas supporters and supporting terrorism. And I just want to off the bat say that loss of innocent life is terrible. That's a given. Loss of innocent life on either side from people who have nothing to do with this is insane. And obviously, from my last video essay, you know how I feel about anti-Semitism. Obviously, I don't like it from the way I analyzed Attack on Titan. So you already know my position on that. So I don't want to hear anyone in the comments being like, you support Hamas, you support terrorism. How could you do this? If you do that, I'm blocking you because I don't have time for that. You know what my position is, and I don't want to hear that bullshit. We good? Okay. So Palestine, what is going on? So basically, Israel in itself is a fascist regime. It is run by two major people. I mean, probably more like three, but these are the people I'm going to hit on: Netanyahu and Ben Gvir. So Netanyahu himself has insane positions. I mean, Israel itself is a really right-wing, like I said, fascist regime. So, I mean, this is an apartheid state. So, and Netanyahu has played a huge part in obviously continuing that as the prime minister. He has the power to stop the apartheid state, and yet he keeps it going. His son, I believe, is also an extremist, and he himself has made like Hitler apologist comments before that, like, Hitler didn't want to kill the Jews, he just wanted to expel them. Once again, like, we're dealing with insane people, okay? Then there's Ben Gvir, literally labeled as a terrorist by his own government. By his own government. I found this article that listed all of the crazy things he's done, okay? Ben Gvir, who is 46, has been convicted on at least 8 charges, including supporting a terrorist organization and incitement to racism, compiling a criminal record so long that when he appeared before a judge, we had to change the ink on the printer. So, I mean, that's all I need to say. That's all I need to say. We are dealing, literally, people in this government who are running people's lives, affecting people's lives, are criminals, are terrorists, that's what the situation is. Also, I want to touch on like what happened. Why are we even talking about Palestine? Why is Palestine back in the media apparatus? Because it was kind of first touched on, I feel like, in a pro-Palestine way for the first time in, like, I want to say 2021, like a few years ago. People were posting about it, supporting Palestine, but then, you know, as we do, we forget about it. So why is it back in the media? Earlier this week, Hamas did an attack on a festival outside, I believe it was a music festival outside of Gaza, which was full of Israeli partygoers. It was targeted and bombed, leaving, I believe the death count as of filming this is at 1,300 people dead and 3,000 wounded. So, like I said, obviously that is terrible, and innocent people who didn't do anything should not be attacked. But I think Hamas's position, this is, I believe, what they have said, is that they also kidnapped Israelis from that same festival, and they were hoping to gain leverage against the Israeli government and do like a hostage swap. The Israeli government just kind of is unpredictable in that sense, I guess. Like, it didn't work at all, because those same people that are kidnapped are still trapped in Gaza, and the Israeli government their actions haven't really proved that they really give a crap at all about them being in there. So, as Gaza is like bombed with white phosphorus and people's faces are being burned off, you know, it doesn't really, and it's the airstrikes constantly. It doesn't really seem like they're there. So that is the situation, but attacks like that don't happen for any reason. Like I said, obviously a terrible way to go about that. This isn't born out of thin air. Things like this don't just happen for no reason. How did we get here? Also, I want to make a note that Hamas was funded by the Israeli government so that it could be in opposition against a Palestinian revolutionary Arafat. It's blowback. They are the reason why Hamas exists, not only because the apartheid state exists, and that's one of the main reasons why Hamas is a thing in the first place, and also they funded Hamas. Everything leads back to Israel. That is what you will learn. So Nakba, what is Nakba? Pre-1947, Palestine was its own nation state and was prospering. But 1947, there was a mass displacement of Palestinians. Nakba means catastrophe in Arabic. So there was mass displacement Palestinians from 1947 to 1948. They lost their homes to Jewish settlers, evictions, their homes were demolished because Zionists wanted to create a Jewish state and they chose Palestine. It was a very targeted attack because they could have built that Jewish state anywhere, or they could have, coexisted with the Palestinians, but instead they took their homes, made a militant army, kill them and survey them constantly. They took a very aggro stance to get what they want. Before that, Palestine was a multicultural, multi-ethnic society. So like I said, they could have coexisted along each other. The Palestinians didn't do anything. They got their homes stolen and were forced into subjugation. So there was increased Jewish immigration coupled with, like I said, which is fine for Jewish people to want to live in Palestine, but then it's coupled with this Zionist conflict and ideology that led to the subjugation of these people who were already there. So Israel partitioned the lands into two sides, the Arab side and the Jewish side. The Arab world in general, which are like the surrounding countries around Israel, Palestine, rejected that notion. And because they did, I got this information from the UN, by the way. So because the Arab world rejected this, Israel did subsequent attacks on Palestinian villages. Why? I don't know. I guess as a show of power, to show they're not messing around and that they're going to get what they want. It's evil. I don't know why you would do it, but they did. So more than half the population was displaced, and Israel only got bigger while Palestine got smaller and smaller and smaller. And now they only have like two tiny little sections of land, the West Bank and Gaza, where they can reside. Everywhere else, they're not allowed to be. In Gaza itself, the place that is the main location of this attack is an open-air prison. There are 2 million people locked in this cage. Like I said, constantly surveyed by IDF, constantly being attacked and harassed by Jewish settlers. Because of this Hamas attack, the people within Gaza are left with no water. They are kept on a diet, as Israel likes to call it, and they have no power or electricity at all. 90%, and it's not that they have no water, it's that 90% of their water is like toxic and not drinkable at all. So they are left with terrible living conditions, inhumane living conditions. In the West Bank, Israel, I watched this video, I believe it was like a Vox video or a Vice video, where this Palestinian journalist visits the West Bank, because that's where her father grew up, to see how different it was. And there was this part where she was walking down this aisle or like this walkway, and they were telling her about how they had to build a net above the walkway because Israeli settlers were just throwing trash down at them. And so they had to figure something out to keep that from happening. But on top of that, in the West Bank, Palestinians are constantly threatened with guns by these settlers. They have the IDF called on them, which is just a really hard circumstance because you have these Israeli settlers harassing you, and then the IDF is called or the police is called, and like nobody's on your side. Absolutely nobody. So you were just left to defend for yourself. At this point, Palestinians are like, just kill me. I don't care. Like, would death be better than the situation I'm living in? Like, it's just, to get to that mental state, you have to be, it's insane conditions that we can't even fathom in the US, that these people are constantly living through. There are constant military checkpoints on top of all of that I just mentioned, that are built sometimes in front of people's homes, making it hard for them to come to and fro. They can't even go freely. There's also certain streets in the West Bank that are not, like, Palestinians are not allowed to walk on. If you cross them, you'll probably be like arrested or even killed because, like I said, nobody's there to defend you. So the IDF can do whatever the frick they want to you because nobody's gonna blink an eye. No Palestinians have the power to stand up to them because they will just mow you down. They can do whatever they want to you. So every day is just a constant, am I going to live? How am I going to get through this? Just a constant anxiety-induced situation. There were also a protest back in 2018. I think there was a major protest where the IDF targeted children and elderly women, people with slingshots, whenever they have sniper rifles, several feet in the air, can't even see them, but they're up there with sniper rifles ready to shoot you down at any moment. And the IDF even tweeted back then in a deleted tweet saying every shot was calculated. So everyone they shot, they did not miss. And everyone they shot was on purpose. And there's also a really good documentary where a journalist goes over that protest and talks about how they killed 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 14-year-olds who at the time of their death, like, she goes over what they were doing at the time of their death, how old they were, what their names were. They weren't doing anything. They were hiding behind trash cans or just standing there or, for older people, taking a smoke break or chilling or something. And then they just get sniped from above. For what? It's senseless violence. Like, this is not people call this a war, people call this a conflict. This is not a war, really. How can it be a war if one side is a entire army and the other side is people with slingshots? Like, that's not equal. No person on the Palestinian side can defend against themselves, against trained military officers. Like, it's not comparable at all. Even Hamas has to be funded by, like, Iran. So it's like, they have no power. Like, there's nothing they can do without the help of other people or at all, really, if you're just an innocent Palestinian. There's so much more that has happened over the past 80 years to Palestinians that I'm probably missing. Because how can I get every detail of what these people have to go through on a daily basis? It literally makes my stomach hurt. Like, it's insane. It's, like I said, it's been very depressing and really a good reminder how awful people are and how they truly, and where they truly stand. Like, a lot of these politicians in America, where they truly stand. It's crazy that at the time of them building Israel and establishing Israel, right before that, a few years ago, their own people were being, like, 6 million Jews died in Germany, like, in the Holocaust. It honestly, to me, feels like you don't value them, because if you valued them, then you would understand the heartbreak of the Holocaust, of people being burned alive, and just the atrocity of that situation. So to go from that, like, to me, it feels like you don't even care about them, your own people, to go from that to doing it to other people. Like, how do you do that? But fascism is about creating the in-group, and Israel has shown that they will stop at nothing until they have expelled and fully accomplished the mission of ethnically cleansing the Palestinians. But I do want to compare it to another apartheid state because it's probably a more famous apartheid state. And when you think of that word, you probably think of South Africa. I want to look at South Africa, compare it, kind of think about as we look towards Palestine, hopefully one day getting emancipation. How did these people who went through the same thing get emancipation? I will say that South Africa, when I was researching it, seems a lot more like the US apartheid state, like this Jim Crow and segregation. You know, it seems a lot more akin to that. They had in South Africa a basically separate but equal policy where they claimed that they were equal. They just want to be on separate ends, but really the conditions that the Black people were living in South Africa were terrible. Their infrastructure was not as good. You know, it's basically very akin to US, where their schools were bad, their water wasn't as good, their just infrastructure in general was not as developed. US's case, how can you take people who were just in slavery, you consider giving them reparations, you don't, so they're just poor, you throw them out on the street, so how can they build like entire communities from that in a sustainable way whenever you have given them no chance at doing that at all? So in the South African History Online, they do a really good job at explaining apartheid in South Africa and what that means. Apartheid made laws forced the different racial groups to live separately and develop separately, and grossly unequally too. It tried to stop all intermarriage and social integration between racial groups. During apartheid, to have a friendship with someone of a different race generally brought suspicion upon you, or worse. More than this, apartheid was a social system which severely disadvantaged the majority of the population simply because they did not share the skin color of the rulers. Many were kept just above the destitution because they were non-white. So what South Africa did is, I want to say it was before they got emancipation from Britain. So they just were enslaved and oppressed by Britain, and now apartheid. So that's great for them. So they developed the ANC, and I want to look at their resistance movement, what they did to accomplish emancipation. So in 1949, the ANC's first line of action was protest and nonviolent action. That's what they did at first. Then in 1952, that didn't work, so they tried to switch it up and called for people to break apartheid rules purposefully. They call this the Defiance Campaign. It's similar to in the US segregation, Jim Crow South, where they did sit-ins and freedom rider demonstrations where they purposefully got arrested. And their hopes of doing this in South Africa were to overcrowd the prisons and overwhelm their oppressors. They didn't succeed. Also, Palestinians have done a similar thing where they've done demonstrations where they've tried to purposely get arrested. But in Israel, instead of going to prison, they just get shot and killed. You can't overcrowd a prison if there's no one to go to prison, right? They're insanely vicious in that sense. You know, ANC has done all these things to go about resistance. For the most part, they've been nonviolent, and there was a group of people similarly to US segregation, where there was a group of people who didn't actually agree with that approach and thought that they would not get emancipation that way and want to take a more violent approach. They were called the PAC. And once again, if we are to compare this to something we are familiar with, Dr. Martin Luther King, even he's thought of as being a very nonviolent leader, but even he recognized that you can't it's hard to win anything politically without violence. And violence doesn't have to be killing someone. Violence can be systematic. It can look different ways other than loss of life. But even he recognized that it's hard to win anything politically if it doesn't cost the oppressor something. You can't just sit there. I think he said, I don't know the direct quote, but I'll probably put it on the screen. He even said that the oppressor isn't just going to give you emancipation and just sit there and ask for it kindly. You have to demand it. And so for a lot of people, violence is necessary. We even see that with like Malcolm X. A lot of these figures are like not talked about because how dare they be violent and how dare they advocate for violence, and whenever they're being oppressed and all they want is emancipation. I mean, if you do all of these things, especially in the ANC's instance in the US civil rights movement, if you do all these things for all these decades, at some point you're going to be fed up and be like, what are we doing wrong? How do we do this? Like, if you do everything that you feel like will win your oppressor over and it doesn't work, then you're like, what am I to do at that point? I just sit here quietly and die or live in these terrible conditions? Like, what do you want me to do? Well, Nelson Mandela is a really big figure. He's one of the main leaders of the resistance in South Africa. I believe he died in like 2013, but he spent 27 years in prison. I think that's a pretty well-known fact. Even after he won emancipation for South Africa, he himself even looked towards Palestine and was like, okay, now we gotta get emancipation for them. And people were so mad at him for having that stance, but he's like, I'm not gonna just change my position because, you know, some random white people think it's unjustifiable for me to support someone else. Like, the crazy thing is, like, how are you gonna give emancipation to someone and then be like, oh, but they can't have it? It really proves that how much you didn't even want these people to have it. Like, you're like, this is not a precedent we're setting. We just gave it to you guys, but how dare you advocate for the Palestinians to have emancipation? Even back then, he recognized, even in the 90s, how much it was like a passing of the torch, which a lot of revolutionaries do, where once they get emancipation, they're like, okay, but if you gave it to me, you need to give it to them. So you can really compare and contrast between South Africa and US and Palestine, and it's so very clear. I mean, the US civil rights movement was violent, and not necessarily because of the civil rights leaders, but because of the police. They were extremely violent on a lot of times, even whenever they were protesting non-violently and they were just marching, they would get beaten, sometimes to death, thrown in prison, beaten to a pulp, have sprayed with water hoses, have German shepherds attack them. Like, it was in Alabama, the church was bombed for no reason. Like, it was incredibly violent. But even if you compare it to US, I feel like Palestine is so, I mean, there's really no need to compare them in that way because they're both terrible. Palestine is so incredibly violent, especially with the introduction of like white phosphorus. Like, that stuff is like a war crime. They're doing war crimes in Palestine, in Israel. They're literally doing war crimes. So just the amount that you have to dehumanize someone to do that to them, especially innocent people, children, women, pregnant women, to be able to do that, you really, as one of the Israeli officials like, I think they tweeted out, you really have to view them as human animals at that point, because you can't view them as fully human if you will do that to them. Lastly, I believe this is lastly, I want to take a look at the mainstream media because that really pissed me off. Okay, like I said, this is gonna be a long ass video. So the mainstream media just is so foolish. And it really puts into perspective, like I said, where the Democratic Party stands, where CNN stands. It just shows CNN is so conservative, and they are a lot closer to Fox News than I think the average American citizen thinks they are. Why are they on the same side? Why are they on the same side as Fox News when you're supposed to be the truth tellers and unbiased? I forget what their slogan is, but it's something like that. You're supposed to be the liberal media. I guess they're being liberals, that's for sure. Because you're supposed to be to the left, and you're not. You're on the exact same position on this issue as Fox News is. They have only had like a few Palestinian people on the show, and I remember when Fareed had a Palestinian, he's like a professor or something, on his show. It felt like there was so much like pushback and tension, like, oh, but you're not Hamas. Like the fact that they have to always clarify that someone's not Hamas, like obviously I'm not Hamas. Like it shows that they equate Palestine with Hamas, like subconsciously, like those two are the same. So, but you're not one of them. You're the good ones, right? I think because I am Black, I feel so deeply about these issues. I've always been really concerned with politics and always been really interested in socio-political things. A lot of my art, even from when I was younger, was socio-political, and I couldn't stop making art about the things that were happening around me and my observations of them. And I think because of that, I have no clue why I became like this, because everyone in my life, I mean, girl, I'm from Texas. Like everyone in my life is apolitical or conservative. So I don't know why I'm this leftist, but I think just because of my background, this stuff really hits me. I know the violence that is the police force. I know the violence that is being oppressed and subjugated and forced into ghettos, and I know of the violence. And so this just really hits me, I think. Joe Biden, I think this is really kind of disappointing, but it's a good reminder that he's just as evil and disgusting as the rest of them, because his comments have been just disgusting, dude. Like, our nation's support for Israel is resolute and unwavering. Bombing children, doing war crimes. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying? Like, what? And the right time to praise the terrorists who seek to destroy them is never. The IDF, the Israeli government, are terrorists. Like, what else can you call this? What else can you call these actions I just spent the past like 30 minutes talking about? How can you describe that other than terrorism? A lot of his tweets are just like, we have Israel's back. Silence is complicity, and I refuse to be silent. But what you're doing is calling for violence. I mean, I don't know why I'm even mad at Joe Biden, because obviously he's going to have this position. Every US president is going to have this position, obviously. But I don't even know why I'm so... It's just like these people, the CNN, the media, politicians, have the power to bring these people emancipation, to put pressure on Israel. Obviously, there have been celebrities who have said stuff. Honestly, who the frick cares? Who cares what Justin Bieber had to say? Who cares? Zara Larsson actually made a good comparison against Ukraine, basically saying like, you support Ukraine, but you don't support the Palestinian emancipation. That's a little weird. Which, it is weird. Because why? Why is that? Once again, another thing that this puts into perspective, that America only supports Ukraine for what it will give them. Because Ukraine is giving them loads of money from the selling and making of weapons. I think they're just selling old weapons, actually, selling tanks, weapons that they don't use. because of that, because they're making loads of money without, I think some US official, politician or whatever, said that they can make loads of money and benefit tremendously from the Ukrainian war without having to put any of their people on the line, without any cost to them. It's like free labor. Like they don't have to expend anything. They just are constantly receiving the benefits of the Ukrainian war, which is why, once again, they have the power to help end the Ukrainian war that's been going on for, I want to say, coming up on 2 years. Have they done that? Have they tried to get Putin to the table? No, they're not an ally of Ukraine either. I don't even know that they're an ally of Israel. They don't care about any of these people. They only care about what they will give them. That's all that the US government cares about. And it puts this into extreme perspective. It's a parasitic relationship. It's disgusting because Ukrainians have lost their lives, Palestinians have lost their lives, and you have the power to really affect these things in a good way. And how am I supposed to have any hope that if the people that are running our world, running our country, are this evil, this disgusting, are willing to waste this many lives, put this many lives on the line for monetary gain? How am I supposed to have any hope in this world that anything can get better whenever they show time and time again that they do not give a fuck? How am I supposed to have any hope after that? That's why this entire thing has been incredibly depressing, because I think it's put into perspective a lot of things. I don't want to say they're making more sense, because I already knew these things, but it kind of reestablishes and confirms that in my mind. I typically like to end my videos with like, how can we fix this? You know, what is there to do there? I don't know. If people can just get away with doing war crimes and nobody bats an eye and everybody's just like, yes, do that, do war crimes, burn people alive, we support you doing that. I mean, how am I supposed to have any hope? I obviously support Palestine's emancipation. They deserve it. They deserve to be free. They deserve to get their land back, but most importantly, they just deserve to be safe and secure in whatever way that looks like for them. Because, I mean, we have to be realistic. It doesn't seem like Israel is going to give back Palestine anytime soon. In fact, they're only further expelling Palestinians. But they just deserve to be happy and healthy. That's what everyone deserves. They deserve to have clean water and food and not be put on diets and have no electricity or power. They deserve to have an amazing life, and I really hope they get emancipation. This is just my way of doing my part, and hopefully I can influence someone out there. I don't know why I have to influence people to believe that these people deserve emancipation. I think that's kind of insane, but hopefully I can, with this video, influence someone to think differently about this situation. Yeah, that's all for me. Okay, bye.